You cannot wish for a strong character and an easy life. Each is the price of the other. What if what you're going through isn't hard? What if you're just sensitive?
I think that most of us can look back on our lives to 10 years ago and think about the problems that we were dealing with then and think about how much of a pittance and how small those problems were compared to the problems that we deal with today. At least that's how I probably feel. Maybe you feel the same way. And so I then think, okay, well, if I feel that way about the problems that I had 10 years ago, then 10 years from now, Alex will look back at the problems that I'm dealing with today and feel the same way. And so if he feels that way then about the problems that I have now, then the only difference is the perspective that he has that I don't have. And so I might just be a sensitive little pansy, and maybe these aren't problems at all. Maybe these are just facts of life and I need to habituate to them. Because I remember my first lawsuit, right? Because it's like when you're in business long enough, you make enough money, you're just going to get sued. It is what it is. And I was listening to Elon Musk talk about this, and at any given time, Tesla has hundreds of lawsuits. At any, like, just they have massive departments of legal just for all the different things that are going on. And it was thinking that a requisite for success is a problem. Like, you cannot become the wealthiest man in the world and not get sued. Like, getting sued is an indicator that you're actually is a requisite for being there. There's no person has been there without this. And so reframing what I used to consider a problem as a point of evidence that I am on the path that I originally chose.
I remember the first time that I ever tried to incline chest press 20 kilos. And as I got it up, this is in the Center for Sporting Excellence in Newcastle Gym. And as I got it up there, I didn't have the tricep strength to be able to keep it. And I watched this thing slowly come down to my face. And it just landed on my nose. And I like sort of bailed it out off my nose.
Yeah.
And now it's not even the warm-up to the warm-up to the warm-up set. So the problem is that we don't have very good memory. We don't have theory of mind for ourselves, for a previous version of ourselves. I've always thought that it would be such an amazing tool. Maybe Neuralink can do it at some point in the future. You know how people want to go back in time and they want to see a different place? I would love to go back in time in my own mind and remember the texture of my own existence and what were the things that I thought about. I've told this story before, but it's pretty illustrative. Day One is a journal that you can use for your phone. It's pretty good. And for me, it's big shit. It's like big things are happening. If I open Day One, some fucking shit's going down. And breakups and illnesses and being worried about people dying or whatever the fuck. I once opened it to write down that the MC in room 2, the R&B room of our Saturday night club night, had told me that he was leaving to go to a competitor event 15 miles away. And I remember thinking that it was so salient to me that it deserved to go in along with breakups and do I go on this reality TV show or do I not? Because I was adamant that that would be the beginning of the end, because the only reason the Asian SOC, the Asian Society, came down was because they liked this particular MC, and if he went, then Asian SOC would stop coming, and if Asian stopped coming, then that would mean this, and then the whole business would go and I'd be dead. But I don't think that anymore. And there was one time where I hadn't worked our events for quite a while, and a DJ that used to work for us came through, and he thought that he'd wind me up by saying 3 minutes before we opened that something was up with one of the CDJs. Something's up with one of the CDJs a couple of minutes before you open. Things are bad because there's usually not a spare, and it means that the night's going to be delayed or whatever, and there was lots of people outside waiting to come in or whatever it might be. And he was expecting a response from a previous version of me, which would have been the one that would have gone into Day One and typed about the fact that the CDJ hadn't worked. And I just said, okay, well, I don't know, we'll fix it. And he called out, broke the fourth wall and said, it's not broken at all. Like, I just thought that I'd wind you up, but you didn't play the game. I'm like, oh, right. It's you've grown or you've changed thing.
Yeah. It was don't punk the game.
Yes. Don't punk the game.
Yeah. I think the point is to always punk the game as many times as you possibly can, especially if you're the one getting the game played on you by yourself.
What's your framework for quitting things and moving on to something new? How do you know when you're quitting because you're being a bitch?
Yeah.
And how do you know that you're moving on from something that's no longer worthwhile?
Man, so there's a handful of questions that I think everyone faces that you never know the right answer to. And so it's like, how much is the right amount to invest versus consume is one of those answers. Like, if you consume nothing and you invest everything into it tomorrow, you end up with a life where you enjoyed nothing and then you have a big pile of shit.
Delayed gratification in the
Exactly.
extreme results in no gratification.
Right. And so like these are rather than either ors, they're continuums. And so to be managed more than problems to be solved. And so I think just from a decision-making framework, that's number one. Number two is, so with regards to this one, which is, do you push or do you pivot, which is how I frame this question. Pushing, like, do I push through whatever this hardness is, and there's like something that's in sight that I think I can go to, or there are fundamental things that have changed that make my original hypothesis wrong. And so I'm telling the secret right now. But for me, I won't quit if no new information has come to light. And so if I say I'm going to do this based on these assumptions, if those assumptions have still held, then it's a push situation. If there's new data that's come to light that changes the nature of why I'm pushing, or the outcome for what I'm going to get from pushing, or the way that I'm pushing is incorrect, then I would, quote, quit. But quitting has a lot of heavy terminology in, I'd say personal motivation masturbation.
Pivot's much softer.
Right. Because I think that everything is a pivot except for stopping. And so I think even reframing, like, language matters a lot, and I care a lot about language. And so, like, nothing is quitting unless you stop. And if you continue to pivot and you continue to push, either of those are activity. And so you will stumble upon something that does work, in which case do more of it. And so that has always been my frame, but I have an initial assumption or series of assumptions for a desired thing. So let's say I want to build my social media brand. I say, okay, I believe that if I make, content about things that no one else can make content about, that is more higher level business stuff than is out there, because most of the YouTubers are YouTubers, not business people, there will be an audience for that. And in the beginning, I will have fewer people who follow it, but if I make really good stuff, over time, eventually people will tell people, and I will get better at making content, and that will grow. So if I'm at year 2, and the thing is like, do I have leading indicators? And so, like, even in business stuff, like, I don't need the outcome, but are there leading indicators that are telling me that I'm on the right path? And so identifying ahead of time, just like we have problems that we identify, like, okay, if we succeed, like, people are gonna recognize you in the street, you're not gonna be able to go out as much, or like all these are problems that I'm gonna have to deal with. Cool, I'm willing to pay for those. But what are the things along the way that will tell me that even though I haven't achieved Mr. Beastdom, that I'm on the right path? And so I think having those little indicators allow you to keep taking steps towards the ultimate thing and continue to push. I mean, I have a different tweet, which is that the world belongs to those who can continue to work without seeing the result of their work, continue to do without seeing the result of their doing. And it's really the person who can do that for the longest period of time. And that's usually because they're still getting leading indicators. It's just that it's amounting to a much bigger mountain. And so, like, if you want to do big shit, it takes a way longer period of time, because the easy shit, the little hills, everyone conquers really quickly. I'm on time. I say please and thank you. It's like, so fucking what? And so, like, if you want to do something that most people can't do, literally just extend the time horizon on the things that most people can't weather. Like, there's so much opportunity on the other side of being willing to persist for an extended period of time on the correct path without getting positive reinforcement from your environment. And the longer you can stick with something without that positive feedback loop in terms of the big external thing, the easier the opportunities are, because so few people can pursue them.
In James Clear's Atomic Habits, I think he interviews maybe the Chinese weightlifting team's head coach, and he asked, what is the difference between the absolute elite world champions and the ones that simply qualify? And the coach said, the absolute elite are the ones who can continue to come in every single day without getting bored. That was it. And Matt Fraser talks about it as well, where he says, doing an hour and a half of monostructural work on the rower, you've got to do zone 2. Hey, guess what? You don't even get the benefit of feeling like you worked that hard.
Yeah.
You just get to kind of, whatever, like 24 strokes a minute or something, like slow zone 2, whatever the thing is. But no one's fired up for that. He said people make a mistake in believing that I'm fired up to go and do that session. I'm not fired up to go and do that session. I just go and do that session.
We have a saying, so there's a lot of people say, like, do the work. And in Gym Launch, and it's continued into our stuff today, but do the boring work is what we call it. And boring is what makes you rich. The boring activities, it's the double checking the emails. It's writing the follow-up sequence that you really don't feel like writing. And honestly, just getting it done will make you significantly more money than not getting it done. And so it's like, it's It's following with a lead from a month ago and just being like, hey, by the way, are you still interested in that thing? It's the stuff that you don't want to do. Like, no one's like, I can't wait to follow up with these leads that haven't responded to the last 2 text messages I sent. But if you follow up to everybody, you will make more sales than if you don't.
Presuming that it's an effective strategy. Because there are ways that you can continue to chug away and do a thing with no positive reinforcement. But hey, guess what? That's the direction that you're supposed to be going in, and you're walking over there.
Yeah. That's a push and pivot, right? Like if no one responds, then I would say I have 0 leading indicators. But if you have enough response rates, then it's worth the toil. But I mean, Michael Phelps talks about this too with swimming, like just laps after laps after, like he doesn't even have the variety of like different moves or different, like it's just laps, just sheer volume of work. And I call it the Rocky cutscene. And almost every successful person that I have ever encountered has gone through not a month or a year, but many years of doing work without reward, where they have to do things that other people find boring, and they have to sacrifice things that everyone finds interesting, that most people want to do during that entire season of their life. And they basically sacrifice a season of other things that they would prefer to do stuff that they would not prefer to do because of the one thing they want most. And that's the Rocky cutscene. And instead of lasting 5 minutes, it just usually lasts 5 or 10 years.